I would like to welcome everyone to the Roxboro Roundtables. My name is Jessica Putman, and I'm the student coordinator for the tables. Today, our topic is the challenges of the Philadelphia school system, and our host today will be Madeline Gambino.
Hello, this is Madeline Gambino. I'm the AmeriCorps Vista serving at Philadelphia University this year. I'm the first Vista working with Office of Student Engagement on a new program called Go Far, Philadelphia Achieves Readiness, which is a post-secondary readiness and success program working with 7th through 10th graders in the area. Introduce our panelists. We'll start with the Dean.
Hi everyone, my name is Dean Tinsley. I am a product of the Philadelphia public, private, and charter school system.
My name is Jermaine Smith. I am the Associate for Diversity and Social Justice, as well as a graduate student in the SE MBA program.
Hi everyone, my name is Shakar Hawkins. I'm a senior construction management major. I was born and raised here in Philly, and I have also attended Philadelphia school system.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm a sophomore fashion management and merchandising major here at Philadelphia University.
Hi, my name is Hannah Banks, and I am a senior psychology major at Philadelphia University.
My name is Louise McShane. I work in the Office of Community Service and Student Engagement, and I'm the liaison to our community partners.
Oh, Jeff Ashley, Director of the Center for Teaching Innovation and Nexus Learning.
Okay, great. So just a little bit of background on the Philadelphia School District before we get started with our panelists' experiences with the school district. It is the 8th largest in the United States with 130,000 students in the public schools and an additional 64,000 in charter schools. It's about 55% African American, 18% Latino, 17% white, and 87% of students come from circumstances of poverty, which makes the entire district eligible for free lunch. So first, I'm going to ask the panelists to go around and just talk briefly about what their experiences with the school district have been, so either personal or work experiences, in just a couple of minutes, and to address first some of the ranges of challenges that they've had experience working with. So we hear things about budget cuts, school closures, poverty, violence, that sort of thing. So to talk from your experience first.
I'll go first. This is Jessica. I live in Philadelphia, but I didn't go to a public school system, only based on the simple fact that my option for public school was Bartram, and that was not going to happen. My mom was not allowing that, so I ended up going to, I ended up going to a private school instead of a public school, and for one semester of my high school career, I had to go to a different school, and I ended up going to a charter school. But it was an online charter school, which was actually really beneficial and different than being in a brick and mortar school. But I do know a lot of people who do go to public schools like Bartram and Overbrook, and I mean, compared to what they were learning on the same grade level as me, was completely different from my Catholic school experience. Like, my classes seemed far more advanced than what they were learning at the same grade level, but I don't know.
Hi, this is Adim speaking. For high school, I went to Germantown High School, which is actually a closed school. It closed in 2013. It said that it was closed because of poor student performance, and it was a part of one of the 13 schools that Philadelphia School District had closed that year. And right off the bat, coming from a charter school in middle school and going into a public high school, I noticed that what a lot of my peers and my fellow students had learned in previous years was, to be honest, nowhere near comparable to what I had learned from third to 8th grade. People in my class were reading on 3rd grade reading levels, and the 9th grade they were performing at 5th grade proficiency in terms of mathematics and writing skills. So I think that was really awakening to me, coming from a charter school and going into a space where the students were barely reading 4-syllable words properly or correctly, or however. Yeah, it was that. And then adding on to that, me going through that for 4 years, and then coming to a college where your first humanities class is expecting of you to know Friedrich Nietzsche and Freud and all that, when I was in classes where if you were taking a humanities course, the professor didn't expect you, or the teacher rather in high school, didn't expect you to be able to perform, let alone read the text or understand it.
This is Jermaine speaking. I grew up in New York, so I did not go through the Philadelphia public school system at all, but my experience with it has been more work and academic related, surrounding kind of parent engagement and parent focus, which was very eye-opening, realizing that parents do not feel they have much of a choice in regards to where their child goes to school if they're looking at a public school, because everything is zoned by neighborhood, and a lot of the schools that are neighborhood schools are not performing well at all. And so the other option, of course, is charter schools, but then a lot of times there's lotteries for that, and it's hard to get into some of them and things of that sort. And so issues of socioeconomic status come up when you think about that or talk about that. Even parents' own experiences with the school system also kind of came up in those conversations. There are some schools that are kind of neighborhood schools where, you know, mom went there, grandma went there, great-grandma went there, and so there's a relationship with the school and more so people in the school, but it's not known for its academic, you know, enrichment or anything of that sort. So that's kind of been my experience with the system.
Growing up, I went to quite a few different, sorry, my name is Shakar, I'm speaking. Growing up, I went to a few different public schools, local neighborhood schools. When I got to middle school, I went to a charter school, which was amazing. It was an African-based charter school, so it was great to not only learn about people and my culture, it was really amazing in the sense to escape the traditional sense of school and not only have a focus on academics, but also learning about my people, my past. Going in high school, I was very fortunate to attend Central High School, and it's a magnet school, and it's hands down one of the best schools in the city. And I'm very, very fortunate because my parents would not let me go to my neighborhood school, quite frankly. My time there was quite amazing, actually, and it was really sad almost to really see it compared to a lot of other neighborhood schools in Philly, because you do have some schools who are doing extremely well, their students, but there's a big lack of similarities in a sense, in which you have ninth graders across the entire city, like Adeem mentioned earlier, at different reading levels and different things like that. I didn't really notice the big problem with the Philadelphia School District until after high school. I graduated from Central in 2012, and the following school year, things got dramatically worse. The biggest problem that I noticed was the budget cuts. For example, we had a dramatic decrease in the number of college appointing counselors. So basically, we had people volunteering their time to make sure our graduating seniors were applying for school and things like that. We even ran out of people to operate our school's library. We have a very awesome alumni association. They donated and fundraised over $25 million to give the state of our library. And it sucks because we did not have people to maintain libraries so we can even use it for academics. So that's how the budget cuts dramatically affected Central High School. And I'm sure there's other ways that have gotten dramatically worse. And looking at the amazing opportunities I've had from Central in high school, I can't imagine how different it was at other high schools throughout the area.
This is Lisa speaking, and I don't have much experience in the high school education in Philadelphia because I did move, but I did attend public school in Philadelphia from kindergarten to second grade, and then I did go to a charter school until sixth grade. So I have experience with that, with public and charter, and the reason I switched to charter school was because the public school that I originally was attending was just, it wasn't a good place to be, so my mom really wanted to move me, so I was fortunate enough to be in the lottery for this charter school. I went to New Foundations Charter and to be accepted, so I attended there from, I believe, second grade to sixth grade. That was a lot better experience compared to public school. And then I moved to the suburbs of Lowtown, and that transition from the Philadelphia School District to like the suburb in Bucks County was so dramatic. Middle school, their system's different. There's only like 3 set middle schools, so I just went to the one closest to my house, and then from those 3 middle schools, everyone goes to the same high school, so I went to a very large high school. I went to Nishanli High School, and I remember like being in high school and then talking to my friends back in Philadelphia and just talking about our classes and comparing, you know, like academically wise, like what we're doing. We were on completely different levels. I would always notice that I would be either 1 to 2 like levels above them, and they didn't know what I was talking about. So it was crazy to see how just jumping 20 minutes from outside of Philadelphia really changed that whole system and kind of their level of academics compared to Philadelphia. So it was amazing.
This is Hannah speaking. I did not grow up in the Philadelphia area, but I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I attended Harrisburg Academy, mainly because my dad was the principal, so it was a pretty easy decision. So from 2nd grade until 12th grade, I was at the academy, and coming here, I understood that Philadelphia was having a lot of issues with the educational system, but again, I didn't really realize that until I came to college and I started working with Pump Up, which is the Philadelphia University Mentoring Program. I started as a volunteer my sophomore year, assistant coordinator my junior year, and now I'm the student director for that. And it's been an amazing journey, but also really heartbreaking to look into the schools and really see the challenges that are faced, because I just did not have any kind of experience with that in my high school and middle and lower school education. I went into the high school when we did have high school in the program, and it was very hard to get cooperation from the teachers and faculty there. A lot of times I would go and there really wasn't too much organization, so organization was a huge problem that we saw, which was very disappointing because we're coming in as volunteers, we want to help, but people aren't there. You know, I'm sure people want the help, but it's a difference between wanting it and then being available and saying, yes, come help us, and giving us the opportunity to come in and help. So that was a big thing, was having organization. Now our program is only kindergarten through 8th grade, and the same sort of thing happens. So we've been working keeping the schools that are really good at responding with us, and unfortunately having to drop schools who are not as cooperative. But you know, the problems we see are lots of our volunteers talk about, you know, the teachers who are not as dedicated to the programs as they could be, and the students, you know, you see they really, really want to learn and work hard, and it's really hard because people just may not be trained in the right ways to work with these young individuals, and yeah, sorry. It can be really hard to see that, but that's why we're all here working with it to really try and narrow down the points that are that we can target and try to fix.
And I think I'm going to talk about you with all my words. Yay. Hi, it's Louise. So maybe I have more words because I have more time in this whole thing. Back in the day, there were parochial schools and public schools for the most part. There were a few private schools. People normally went because in the parochial school system, you went according to your religion. So people sent their children to the school according to the religion that they practiced. So I went to a Roman Catholic school for the first 12 years, and people who were of the Jewish denomination sent their children to Jewish schools, and people who were sent their children to public schools. It's not because of any other reason other than because locally they were not Jewish or Roman Catholic. So money wasn't really an issue. The public school system was okay. And then eventually it became an issue. And then the issues had issues, and then it turned into what we see today. So I'm going to fast forward through a lot of those issues and say that today, fortunately for me, yay, I get to work in a community service office. I get to work with people like Hannah, who come in and have the ability to help me say to principals, I understand there used to be a parochial school system and a Philadelphia school system in this city. And the parochial school system broke down to the point where, as if the public school system didn't have enough issues with little bits of resources to hold it together, the Philadelphia parochial school system broke down and dumped those children into the public school system. And we walked in, fortunately, at a time that we could put a program together to those principals and say, how can we help? Because that's what we all need to do. We all need to go find somebody to help. And we walked into the principals at the local public school systems and said, how can we help? And they said, anything. Can you give us some tutoring help? Can you go help us fundraise? We have no playgrounds. Can you do that? They took our librarians away. They took our resources away as far as guidance counselors. They took everything away because they said they had no money, but our administrators seem to be doing pretty well on payday. So rather than just begrudge the administrators and say, I'm not helping them because it's corrupt, you go to the people that need help, and that's the students who really look like they want to learn and they look like they need a lot of help. So our Office of Community Service goes to the local grade schools with our Philadelphia University mentoring program. And we say to the principals and the administrators, how can we help? For the most part, nobody's on reading level from the get-go. So we provide lots of tutoring programs, mentoring programs like, Big Brothers, Big Sisters. Oh, so cute, they have no mentors, and we match them with Big Brothers, Big Sisters at the local schools, and then they have a big to look up to, and that works really well. It's a really successful program that we have with the local schools. And just recently, thanks to Madeline, we go into the high schools now, and one of the new programs that I'm really excited about is walking into Roxboro High School and having students, not really excited about this part, but having students who say, the medical profession, I'm a public high school student in Philadelphia, I could never pursue a medical. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And so it takes 3 components. It takes a student who is interested in science and medicine. It takes a Philadelphia University student who is pursuing a degree in medicine. And it takes somebody in the medical profession, let's go find them, Drexel Med. If we knock down some buildings and point in that direction, we can find professionals in the medical profession. Dr. Ryan, I know her. There you go. I will stand in the middle. I will get our volunteers from this university. We will capture those students from Roxboro High School, and we will bring you over to Drexel Med. There's your 3 components. We already have dates set up. Everybody's in place. This is going to work. So yay, one example. So we go to Mifflin. Thank you very much. And she says, when we send, and this is not unlike other playgrounds, when we send our elementary school students outside to play, we have concrete. They don't provide playgrounds at the school district anymore. So we wind up with a lot of boo-boos. Well, you have landscape architects, you have interior design students, you have architecture students. All 3 of them are willing to volunteer. We'll get a plan, we'll get some corporate sponsors. Your volunteers, our students, and the corporate folks will work in tandem and make something happen. So that's the kind of stuff that we can be involved in, and it's actually happening. We have dates and plans and blueprints. We have all kinds of wonderful stuff. That's our job. So if everybody said, what can I do? How can I help? Instead of, it's the school district's job. That's not our job. We're not doing it. You have that option of saying that and walking away, but the option I think we should all be choosing, if you're asking my opinion, is how can I help? We're all really fortunate to be in this building on this campus in whatever capacity we're here. They're not as fortunate. Go find somebody you can help. If you're looking for a job or a position to help in, I'm happy to supply. The school district has lots of those places where you can help. And lots of those babies really deserve it, and they're not getting it from anyone else.
And Hannah speaking, they absolutely love it. The children they're so excited and thrilled to have you. And one of our volunteers, she comes back every day. She's a work study volunteer, and she comes back and she says, I just had the greatest day. And I'm like, you just had the greatest day yesterday. And it's all because she goes in and these kids are so excited and thrilled to see that someone is dedicating some of their time to show that they really do care a lot about these kids, and that is so important.
It's good for everyone. Of those 3 components, really good for the school children who would have done without, really good for our students, and not that you do this in any way for this reason, but you happen to be walking into paid internships and maybe future employment with these corporate sponsors. And yay for the corporate sponsors who need to go out and figure out their good deed for the day. And if you tied a knot and hung on for the school district in some occasions to come on and save the day, that's probably not going to happen real quickly. So it seems to be working for everyone involved.
Maybe a next question then is about some more of the kind of systemic issues. So, talking about the interaction between poverty, opportunity, and equity in the education system. So how, for instance, can we talk about how conditions of poverty affect something like that massively important third grade reading level, achieving that by third grade, because that's supposed to be one of those markers that affect then, your health. Obviously, our ability to get into a college, to get certain jobs or on certain career paths. So how do we talk about poverty in that sense, and the relationship it has with the education system, and how do we talk about equity?
Just like to interject, Evan Lane, one thing which I find maddening, because you're talking about how the resources, everything has been cut. You said your library has been cut, the councils have been cut. It costs, I think now, up to $60,000 a year to put one individual in prison. $60,000. And we have no problem building more prisons. And we keep on putting more and more people in the prisons, and when they get released, like recently there was 6,000 released, there was a whole big deal made of it. We're so willing to spend money on prisons, which destroy people, families, communities, but we're not willing to take that same money. $50,000 gives you one guidance counselor, boom, just like that. A librarian, another $50,000. That librarian, that college counselor could keep how many people out of jail? How many people on the right path? I don't understand what's going on. I really don't.
I think it might be lack of involvement. I think if you ask an opinion in this room, are we willing to do that? Or is somebody doing that without our involvement? So if you ask opinions, of course we choose the guidance counselor or the librarian. But we're not really choosing it because we're not involved enough.
That's Louise.
The issues, my name is Shakar. The issues you're bringing up, I think that for the most part, that goes a lot more beyond the context of this conversation we're having, because issues you just brought up, you can go on a whole different spectrum. Mm-hmm. And bring it back to Philadelphia, I believe that if you're a child, in a sense, if you're in school, not saying you have to have a love for education, you need to understand the dire importance of getting a high school degree at least. And I think that's where the problem goes wrong. And that's something we're experiencing here in Philadelphia. For example, I believe that some teachers, or the way the system is set up in a sense, they're not placing a big importance on the word college. So the problem is that you have people who don't see college as an option. And in order for people in these neighborhoods that aren't doing as well as they could, you really need people to understand that in order to get somewhere relatively positively in life, you have to go to college. I'm not saying college is the only way, but generally speaking, education leads to better sense of jobs and having a career. And if you have people who are stuck on the third grade reading level, there's a big disconnect between school being important or school just being a thing that you go through from 8 to 3. I'm very thankful in a sense because I knew college was the only option. I also know that getting one degree that's not enough. You got to keep the ball rolling. And it's really sad because in the school district that my ideas aren't widespread. People literally just go to school because they say, oh, it's school. I have to go to school. Or better yet, if I don't go to school, I'll get in trouble. And it really takes the teachers in the community and other things that we are lacking as an entire city. We're lacking the importance that people need to understand that school is important, not only because you want to be smart, but you want to get somewhere in life. You want to do some things, and at the very basis, you simply need education. And with that, with the entire school district, everything going on, there's a big disconnect because it's not a bridge in a sense that's taking students from being children, from toddlers, educating them, nurturing them, fostering them, giving them everything they need to be the productive adults that we want to see in the city. There's a big disconnect, and that's what we got to figure out.
Can I just go off of what Shakar said and Professor Lane just said? This is Adim speaking. Jeez. And to answer Madeline's question while also connecting back to those points, the narrative of poverty within Philadelphia communities, and I can only, as a Black American, I can speak to the narrative of poverty behind Black America and Black Americanness. So, along with these students currently who are going to who are in disenfranchised neighborhoods, who are a part of marginalized communities and going to disenfranchised schools because they have a lack of resources, we have to also remember that their parents also went through that same cycle. There are students who I went to school with who, if I asked my good friend Muhammad, I remember I will never forget this. I was like, Muhammad, you don't know how to read? I was like, well, why don't you just ask your mom? She was like, I don't live with my mom. I was like, what? Where do you live? I live in a foster home. I was like, well, then ask your foster mom. My foster mom don't know how to read. She just collects a check. Like, it's that cycle and that cyclical nature of, I just repeated myself. It's the cyclical nature of the unawareness on, like to what Shakar was saying, the parent. But it's not necessarily all the parent's fault, because the parent doesn't know how to read either. They can't help their child do statistics. They can't help their child do algebra, calculus, trigonometry, geometry. I know my family couldn't, but that's because my family's not good at math. We're a liberal arts family. My family, my grandparents are Ivy League educated. My grandmother is a graduate of the University of Penn. My grandfather is a graduate of Brown. My mother is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania and Penn State and Temple. We have education in our family. It's going to continue. I'm one of the people. I'm in Philadelphia University now, so they could help me with my reading. They could help me with my math. They could help me write papers. There are things that are missing behind the idea of how is this the kid's fault and what are the kids missing, but when also we need to be instructing the parents, and then that'll work in tandem with how it works at home too.
I just want to add one kind of context thing, and then I will get to you, Jermaine. This is Madeline again. Just to add into the conversation about sort of where we're sending money as well. So Pennsylvania is consistently ranked as one of the worst budget formulas for education. And has one of the highest or greatest inequalities or disparities between really, really, really wealthy school districts and school districts like the one in Philadelphia that are not wealthy. So the difference on how much money is spent per student can double when you get right outside of Philadelphia to one of the suburbs. So just to add in something like that, and it's also I think 97 was when the budget formula was last updated, and that was when the idea of charter schools was still, maybe this is kind of an experiment, so we'll give them some money out of the public school system's pot. But now the charter school system is kind of a system of its own and drawing money from the public school district as well. So, and is kind of cast in a zero-sum way. So that's just one more component I would like to add into the conversation. Jermaine?
I was going to say to Jermaine, you have children in the Philadelphia school system who they go home after school and they're unable to do their homework, and you ask them why, and they say, I can't see. What do you mean you can't see? Do you need glasses? Is that what you're talking about? No, literally I go home, it's too dark, our lights are cut off, I can't see. Or it's dead of winter and my family and I have to huddle together to stay warm. And you talk to the parent, and the parent's like, I know homework is important, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, but my mind is on survival. And I don't have time to sit down with my child and read to him or her at night, because I'm trying to make sure that they literally survive
working two to three jobs.
Right. And so that has been a narrative that has come up a lot just with the research I've done in the school district of families who are like, we need more support, like I need my lights cut on. Can I come to the school and can you direct me to a program, a grant? Can you talk to somebody at like Pico for me about turning my lights on? How about my gas? Because that would help me have my head in the game to speak for this whole education thing, because I'm actually relying on you, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, to do that while I'm trying to figure this out and make sure that my child survives through it. So when we talk about the issues of poverty, these are the effects that are happening. So they leave the school, they go home, and they're in survival mode. So education kind of goes to the bottom because, again, I have to literally survive to the next day. Just want to put that in there.
Yes, yeah, this is Hannah, and I completely agree with that. And I think one of the really big solutions we need to help support those families are the awesome after-school programs you get at places like Northern Children's Services. Thomas Mifflin just started doing a before and after-school program. So instead of being like at school from 8 until 3:09. They're able to go to school at 7:15, and then they're able to stay there until 6 o'clock. Same sort of thing at St. James, where, as Louise best puts it, take them in and keep them as close to us as possible for as long as possible, so that they don't have to go home to these homes that are cold and dark, and the parents just don't have the time they really need to dedicate to their kids. And I think that's a wonderful way for the community to be able to help everyone out. And it's really hard because these programs can't always happen without community funds and donations. I know for St. James they are completely donation based, so they don't get any money from the state or the government or any of that stuff. They just have a lot of caring people in the community giving money to them. And off of a couple of comments that were made earlier, I looked it up, so this isn't like I knew this before. But out of the $2.8 billion that goes to the Philadelphia School District, 38 cents to the dollar are going to public schools, and over almost 800 million are going to charter schools. So there's just like a really big imbalance in how that money's being allotted or allocated. So when you have to be fortunate enough to get into this lottery system. They say no child left behind, but every child who doesn't get into that lottery is technically being left behind because the school district is just not doing what they need to be doing. And a part of it isn't even their fault, it's just they're not getting the funds that they need. So some big change has to happen.
This is Jessica, going off of like the financial thing and like how you just brought up about the whole how much money is going to charter schools versus public schools. I know I've heard a lot about like vouchers, like school vouchers, and basically school vouchers is when like you want to send your child to like a private school, so you get a voucher for whatever your child is worth in that school district to send them to a private school to help pay for tuition. So I know I heard a lot about like how that takes money away from the public school itself, so now they have less money for the kids that they have. But I mean, what do you guys feel about that, like about school vouchers and things of that nature? Like, how does that affect like the public school?
Oh, this is Lisa. I had something to say, before you made comments about the vouchers, about charter schools. Since I was fortunate enough to get in the lottery for a charter school, I noticed after being in it, that it's based off lottery, but half the time it's not. Because now, since I go to this charter school, I know the people, and I know like the people on the PTA and all these things. So my neighbor got in, and now he's out of public school, and then his sister got in. So there are lotteries, but then there are kind of, I'm not going to say special privileges, but you have a connection, you're more than likely going to get in. So the students that are placed in these lotteries lose their chances even more just because of these kids that know people and kind of get in that way. So I feel like that's kind of an even bigger disadvantage to these kids on the waiting list that are trying to get out of these public schools that aren't great for them. They kind of lose that chance.
Going along the lines of vouchers in charter schools is another afterthought that I've had. And it highlights the fact that parents have to go extremely out of their way to get their children an education. For example, like the struggle to get into a charter school. Why do they do that in the first place? Because you look at the public schools that are simply put a problem, and you have some people who take deeper care of their children's or loved ones' education, and they have to steer the way from that school. For example, I have cousins who are 10 years old in high school in 4 years, and already have aunts and uncles asking me, Shakar, what do I do? How do I get them into Central High School? Or where do I have to move to get into different school systems? It's a problem, the fact that I have family members and people that I see considering packing up their houses and moving to other school districts just so they can send a child to get a free education. But a free education is much better than the one they can receive in a household right now.
Yeah, this is Jessica. This is Jessica going off of that whole thing. I mean, I used to go to Prindy, if anybody knows where Prindy is. Well, right up the street is Upper Darby High School, and I've known people who've like literally had their parents like say they live with their aunts or live with their uncles, or just claim a house that's for sale that isn't really there, like just so their kid could go to Upper Darby High School instead of the schools around there. And their kids have to wake up at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning to make it to Upper Darby High School on time to come from so far away in Philly. And then it's like when you get caught, like when Upper Darby High School catches you, it's either you have to pay tuition for your child to come here, or you get sent to jail and your child is taken away from you. Like, I've heard of cases where moms were like, oh, you lied, you get to go to jail, we get to take your child. I'm like, how is that helpful? Like, obviously the mom is trying to give the child a better education than what they could be afforded to, because Upper Darby High School, even though they have some problems, they're like a really good high school. They have so many different other programs that helps, like artsy programs and things of that nature besides just your natural school that other schools don't provide. So it's like, why can't this child go here? And then the tuition is so much if you want to go to this public school, that because like I think at Upper Darby is like 10,000-15,000 maybe or something, like per child or something, whereas at Bartram it's probably like $6,000 per child. And I'm like, how do you expect the parent to pay it? Because like obviously if they could pay it, they would have sent their child somewhere else, but they can't. Like, why are we punishing parents for trying to get their child a better education? Aren't we supposed to be helping them? Like,
because that district sees it as the parent who snuck their kid in as taking the education away from someone else's kid who lives in that neighborhood and could just get in by just applying.
This is Shakar speaking. Some of the prices you just mentioned, if you do the basic calculations for how much a person can make in a year making minimum wage, they're about the same price. So then you have people trying to figure out, how can I provide an education that I want for my child and my child needs, but I don't have the money. So this means you go into extra means like changing addresses, or simply moving, or figuring out things, or pulling any string you possibly can.
Or working 2 jobs.
Absolutely.
You can't help your child do homework because you have a late night shift, your child's in the house by themselves, and then it comes, if you have more than one child, your oldest child's taking care of all the rest of the kids because you're not there because you're working 2 jobs. Like, that's not even close to being fair.
And then that gets to the point of, yes, my child is in school, but my child's not doing as well as I know they can. Because all the doubts they need, the support systems, they're not there. Like, for example, if a parent isn't there, the child's in school, they're getting through, but then also leads to another thing of, my child isn't the A student that I know they could be. They're really breezing through, but because everything's not there, they're not fully supported.
So this is Louise again, and I just wanted to touch on a couple of points. Jameen, of course, said something brilliant. Yeah. But I think one of the really important things is to just make people aware of what's going on. Like, sometimes when you say things, it's like, well, of course they can't concentrate on homework if they don't have any lights and they don't have any heat. Of course not. And of course, we when the freshmen first come in and when we first do community service with them, before they're on campus a full 24 hours, we do service plunge. And we'll take people who maybe are not familiar with Philadelphia, the Philadelphia School District, and we'll have them do volunteer activities in our schools. And a dear sweet freshman got into one of our schools, and we worked in the library, and there were no librarians or library books or people that take the first graders in and read them a book. And she said, well, why don't you just call the school district and tell them that you need a librarian and tell them that you need books? And it's like, yeah, but we don't have those in Philadelphia schools. They've been taken away. The books were taken away. The librarians were taken away. The guidance counselors were taken away. Well, just call and tell them that you want them back. And that's as innocent as a person can be, not knowing our system. And that's how much people need to be educated. They're not there. People are not aware. So fortunately, after some education, Hannah and I were in a meeting recently with another of our elementary schools that are local to us. And one of the things that no one can understand is, how can you drag a poor innocent child through 8 hours of school every day not knowing how to read? That's got to be torture. How can you get to 8th grade, let's stop there because sometimes it's worse, without knowing how to read? That's got to be torture for them. So thank God we recently discussed an initiative. All of the volunteers that we send to this school are going to be concentrated kindergarten to 3rd grade. Send all your volunteers here, because no child is going to leave 3rd grade now without knowing how to read. Let's just concentrate everybody we have in those grades, and we'll make sure that nobody leaves 3rd grade without knowing how to read. That way we're not dragging kindergarten to 3rd is bad enough that they're dragged through 3 years without knowing how to read. But let's not get them to 4th grade without knowing. So at least the consciousness is growing, and at least we're acknowledging the fact that things need to be fixed everywhere, but we're making slight repairs, and we're acknowledging that things are really broken and we need to fix them, and this is at least a start.
And going off of what Louise said, this is Hannah. it's one of those things where you really don't know how bad it gets until you are put in that school. Like I said, I came from Harrisburg County, and I had an idea of how it was, and it wasn't until I was looking to get more involved, and I was like, oh, I like little kids. I've worked with little kids. When I was back in my high school, because it was mixed with the lower school, they're adorable, running all over. So I was like, I can do that. I can work with little kids. And you go in and you see just how different it is, and you're like, oh my God. And you just, there needs to be something more than just a poster where you look and say, this is the dropout rate, this is blah, 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 blah. Where instead of that, you get to go in and you can sit there and you sit with a little kid, and this happened the other day, he was reading, we were practicing, our reading out loud words, and he doesn't know how to pronounce this, and he's in 3rd grade. He can't read that on the page, this. And it's just one of those things where you look and you're like, why? Why isn't this something that is being taken into consideration for,
I think something, Evan, again, I think there's something very poisonous going on. I actually think that the politicians have made a decision to sacrifice a considerable amount of children. You have money being taken out for the charter for those lucky enough to have the connections you very intelligently pointed out, or lucky enough to have their name chosen. The lucky ones are the ones with connections. Or you have the ones who can somewhat afford it, and with the help of the voucher, because the voucher ain't paying for the whole thing, it just helps with it. So for those families that make just enough where the voucher can help them do it, they'll make it into the good private school. For the families who don't have any money, who don't have any of the connections, are going to be going to schools without getting any funds. And with that, you have a decision made that children are going to be sacrificed. And what even concerns me more is the stigma, is you're going to the local school, well, you must be the unlucky, the unchosen, and the poorest of the poor. And it is, I just find that, especially in light of what I said before, where funds are actually going, and a problem that we have to address and we have to politically stop.
This is Jessica. Going off of 2 points, start with Lane's. The whole thing with like the vouchers and things like that, I mean, we wouldn't have needed the vouchers to begin with if the public school system wasn't so horrible. Like if the public school system was even capable of properly using their funding to get the things they need to have the support systems that they need, there wouldn't be a need for children to have to go to other schools to try to go to a private school, because the public schools would be as good as Central or something of that nature. But since there is no, I don't know, like they just weren't good. They're not good now. And like, I understand that the taking out of the money from the school is damaging because you're pulling out more resources that the school doesn't already have. But even when they did have the resources and the proper money, they weren't using it properly. They were using it to pay off their higher administrative. So like they could drive around in nice cars while their school doesn't have a laptop or computer or textbook, a new textbook, or you have one textbook for 5 kids. Like that, I mean, we wouldn't have need the vouchers. And to get rid of the vouchers and to get rid of having to send kids to charter schools, like the main problem would be, like the way to start that is to completely redo the public school system and to fix that, to make sure we have proper people in administration who knows how to use the funding properly, know what they need to do, know how to do it, and know that they're not just putting it in their bank accounts to make themselves wealthy while taking it away from kids who obviously do need it. Because I went to private school, and my mom could tell you it was hard paying for 12 years of private school. And the hardest thing about private school is that if one family can't afford it this year, they leave, they go to a different school. Now your tuition just went up by however much it pays to refill that one person. And then, oh, now it's more expensive this year, so 5 more families leave. And it gets more expensive. So it gets to the point where you can't even send your child to a private school to get better education. Because if you could have had afforded it in the beginning, now you can't. And then go into the 3rd grade reading levels, and Holleen brought up previously about the prison system. I mean, if you're in high school and you can only read on the 3rd grade level, at a certain point, you're not going to be able to get a job. You're not going to be able to do this. You're going to resort to the only thing you know how, especially when you come from these really poor communities. Like, even in my community, like, it's not that bad on my block, I would say. But if you go outside of my block, outside of the park, it's horrible. There's people outside, literally, who will come up to you and be like, do you need weed? Like, and I mean, it's horrible, but it's true. Like, I mean, you're going to go to whatever means necessary to, like, try to support yourself, support your family, do what you need to do. And if you weren't properly raised in school and given the right nourishment and the right knowledge to show you that there's other opportunities to make you better as a person, you're going to resort to what you know best, what you grew up in, and that's what your family also grew up in. Like, you're going to do what you know best, and if you don't have that community and that support system after school, you're also going to have those kids dragged into that because, hey, I don't have nothing to do after school. The only thing I can do is go outside, hang with my friends. Well, this one is involved in this. I'm going to go try it out too, and then you lost your child. Like, it's just a horrible system. Like, the school system literally pushes kids into prisons. Like, it's a whole pipeline system. Like, it's just, oh, 3rd grade reading level, you're not going to make it, go to prison, end of story. So.
I have like 19 points. I wanted to touch on Louise's point, Professor Lane's point, and Jess's point. But I'll start with Louise. The resources available, I think it's important to note that a lot of the resources available to Philadelphia students aren't publicized to the students and the parents, because Shakar and I both met at a program when I was like in 5th grade. Well, no, it wasn't 5th grade. What grade was it?
5th grade.
It was 5th?
Yes.
Okay. We were young, and we were in middle school, and there was a program, an extracurricular program that functioned as a summer camp, but it was actually an extracurricular like learning, and it was taught by college students who would come to one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Philadelphia, taught in one of like the most expensive private schools in Philadelphia. But one, you had to apply. It was a rigorous application, and it helped if you had connections, which I did. That's probably how I got in, to be honest. And yeah, like they taught us classes. And they taught writing classes, language classes, like classes that we would have in college at the college level. And they were teaching like 5th through 8th graders just before they entered high school. And another perk of it was if you tested well enough after all of those classes, you were able to get into Germantown Friends High School, which is like one of the best high schools in Philadelphia and one of the most expensive. But it's a private school, so it's not open to the public.
If I can, that program is Breakthrough Great Philadelphia. It's been truly amazing for what it does for. I've been working with them since I was in 5th grade, and they've actually been with me throughout my 12th grade year. For example, even after the 5th and 6th grade year, they also gave SAT prep to high school students. And being an inner city kid, I wasn't able to afford a fancy SAT tutor, but I went to this program 2 days a week and got free SAT score, help that actually boosted my personal score by over 100 points. So it's programs like this, like a dean just brought up, that they're out there, but they're not advertised. I found out about this program because I was the one kid that did it all. The problem with these programs is that they're simply not big enough to take in everyone. It was like 12 people. I think he just joked and said it was 12 people. He's actually correct. The classes were really small. So things like that really are out there, but like he greatly pointed out, they're not fully accessed or they're not easily available to everyone. And the power to me is that because I know those programs exist, I can now tell people, give this program. I still work hand in hand with that program to this very day. I try to make sure I'm still an active member because I started that program probably 7, 8, 9 years ago. And knowing how much it helped me get to where I am today, at least I can do something to give back to the program. So thank you for bringing it up again.
No problem. I just wanted to make sure because Louise and Hannah kept mentioning that resources are available. And if you want it to be known, then it has to be actively sought. And a lot of people just don't know that it is in existence. That program and ones like yours.
It's Louise again, but just so that you know, that one is in the classroom in Roxboro High School. They're conscious that people don't get to know programs, so they're starting academies inside the high school. And an academy is, what are you into? Landscape, science? What are you into? All the science kids, all the pre-med, if you're interested in something medical, you're the medical academy. You don't need to do anything but show up for school, which that might be, that might be questionable. But if you show up for school, we're going to call you the medical academy kids, and we're going to follow up with something that interests you, and maybe hook you out with something that's good for your future. Sorry. Proceed.
The last 2 points were about the anti-charter school movement and the prison industrial complex, but I don't want to hijack this.
2 minutes.
Okay. Just to touch on like the voucher system and like how much a student is worth per head. So when money is allocated to the Philadelphia school district, it's also the money for the school in Philadelphia is allocated to both the Philadelphia school district and the charter school district. So they both have to split the money when previously the Philadelphia public school district wouldn't have had to do that. And because I think as the years go up, 3 out of every 10 Philadelphia schools, 3 out of every 10 Philadelphia students will transfer to a charter school. So if each person is worth $10,000, the 10 people who are like, what is that? $100,000? Yes, not a math family. $100,000, $100,000, and now the Philadelphia school district only has $70,000 to allocate towards the school versus the money that the charter school is raking up. So the anti-charter school movement is basically is in opposition to that, and is actually putting up a lot of dissent whenever they go to school district meetings. And that was just a point that the anti-charter school movement is actually very vibrant within Philadelphia because they feel like they're taking money away from the students. And the prison industrial complex is just in general exploitative of poor people and black and brown people in general. So along with the 13 school closings that happened in 2013, I think it was more than that. I just remember the number 13. It kept going up. But along with the school closings in Philadelphia in 2013, there was actually a prison built with the money that they would have given the schools, and it just completed a few months ago this year. So it's like outside of Philadelphia, they built a prison. So they knew what they were doing. It's very duplicitous. Yes.
Yeah, and race is something that we didn't even really get to talk about in this conversation, but I think would be a whole nother one to include when talking about the Philadelphia School District. So I think we're out of time. So to just wrap this up, kind of to summarize, the number of different threads that run through this conversation, it's hard to kind of keep track of them, but we were able to cover a bunch. And I think one really important key thing that a bunch of people have brought up is this fact of being able to know where the resources are, because there are resources available, and there are programs that are available. And something that Shakar mentioned, and Adeem, that there's 12 students for this really great program. I heard something recently that if all of the students in the Philadelphia School District were able to access the opportunities, that they could actually realize their academic potential, they would need to make 12 more Harvards just for Philadelphia. So I think that's it's kind of a daunting thought, but a little bit inspiring too. So I would like to thank all the panelists for coming, and Jessica and Professor Lane for hosting us.